Please, someone help me.
The muffled scream pierced through the cold Brooklyn night, barely audible above the distant traffic. Emily Johnson froze, her small hands clutching the torn blanket she'd found earlier. At 12 years old, she knew the streets of New York better than most adults. But this sound, this desperate cry, made her heart race. "Shut up. No one can hear you anyway." A man's rough voice echoed from the abandoned construction site across the street, her bare feet silent on the cracked pavement. Through a gap in the fence, she saw something that made her blood run cold. 3 men were standing around a hole in the ground, shoveling dirt over what looked like a wooden box, and the screams, they were coming from inside it. "That's enough money to disappear forever," another man said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "The Blackwood fortune will be ours soon." Emily's mind raced. Someone was being buried alive. Right now. She had no phone to call 911, no adult to help her. She was just a homeless kid that everyone ignored. But she couldn't let someone die, not when she could do something about it. The men walked toward a van, probably to get more tools. This was her only chance. Without thinking twice, Emily squeezed through the fence, her thin frame easily fitting through the gap. She ran to the hole and started digging with her hands, throwing dirt everywhere. "Getting you out," she whispered urgently. Below, Sophie Blackwood's tears mixed with dirt as she heard the young voice above her. "If you're someone who appreciates emotional stories, we'd love for you to like and subscribe. There's more to come that might move you too." Emily's hands were bleeding, but she didn't stop digging. The dirt was hard and cold, mixed with pieces of concrete that cut into her palms. Every second mattered. The girl trapped below was running out of air. Emily whispered loudly, glancing back to make sure the men hadn't returned. "What's your name?" "Sophie," came the weak reply from below. "Sophie Blackwood. Please, I can't breathe well." Emily's heart sank. She recognized that last name. Everyone in New York knew the Blackwoods. Richard Blackwood owned half the buildings in Manhattan. His face was on magazines and billboards. But right now, his daughter was dying under 3 feet of dirt, and Emily was her only hope. "Listen to me," Emily said, trying to sound calm even though her whole body was shaking. "I'm Emily. I'm 12 years old and I'm going to get you out. But you need to save your air. Breathe slowly, okay?" "Okay," Sophie whimpered. "Are you alone? Did you call the police?" Emily didn't answer that question. How could she explain that she had no phone, no home, no one to call? She'd been living on the streets for 6 months, ever since her parents died in a car accident. Tried to place her, but she'd run away after the first family treated her like a servant. Now she slept in abandoned buildings and ate from garbage cans behind restaurants. "Don't worry about that," Emily said instead. "Just focus on breathing." Her fingers found wood, the box they'd put Sophie in. It was a crude thing, probably built quickly just for this horrible purpose. Emily could feel nail heads and rough planks away, revealing about a square foot of the lid. "They're coming back," Sophie suddenly gasped from inside. "I can hear the van." Emily looked up. Headlights were turning into the construction site. Her mind worked fast. She couldn't outrun 3 grown men. She couldn't fight them. But she could be smart. "Sophie, I'm going to hide for a second," Emily said quickly. "Don't make any noise no matter what happens. Trust me." Rebar from the ground and ran behind a pile of construction materials. The van stopped, and the 3 men got out. They were carrying more shovels. "Let's finish this quickly," the tallest one said. Emily could see his face clearly in the van's headlights. He had a scar across his left cheek and cold, dark eyes. "Mrs. Blackwood wants confirmation by midnight. Mrs. Sophie's stepmother was behind this?" "Still think this is too risky, Marcus," another man said nervously. "Killing a kid?" "She's not a kid, she's a meal ticket," Marcus replied coldly. "With Sophie gone, Victoria Blackwood inherits everything if something happens to Richard. And trust me, something will happen to him very soon. A tragic boating accident maybe, or a heart attack. Victoria's got it all planned." Emily felt sick. This wasn't just about killing Sophie. Mr. Blackwood too. She had to do something now. She looked around desperately. Then she saw it. The van's keys were still in the ignition. The door was open. An idea formed in her mind. It was crazy, but it might work. Moving like a shadow, Emily crept to the van. She'd learned to drive a little bit from her dad before he died. Not well, but enough to make the van move. She climbed into the driver's seat, her feet barely reaching the pedals. One of the men spotted her. Emily turned the key and slammed her foot on the gas. The van lurched forward, heading straight for the hole where Sophie was buried. The men dove out of the way, cursing and shouting. Emily spun the wheel hard, and the van skidded sideways, blocking their path to Sophie. She jumped out and ran back to the hole, the piece of rebar still in her hand. "Stay back!" she shouted at the men, holding the rebar like a weapon. 911, they're coming. It was a lie, but the men didn't know that. Marcus laughed, a cold, harsh sound. "You're that homeless kid who hangs around here. Nobody's going to believe you over us. And you didn't call anyone. You don't even have shoes, let alone a phone." He was right. Emily's bare feet were cut and bleeding. Her clothes were torn and dirty. She looked exactly like what she was, a street kid nobody cared about. Maybe, Emily said, thinking fast. Blackwood is under this dirt. And if you come any closer, I'll scream so loud that everyone in Brooklyn will hear me. There are apartments right across the street. Want to risk it? The three men looked at each other. Marcus took a step forward, and Emily opened her mouth to scream. Wait! The nervous one said. Listen! In the distance, they could hear sirens, getting closer. Emily was as surprised as they were. She hadn't called anyone. Face in one of the apartment windows across the street. An old woman was standing there with a phone in her hand. She'd been watching. She'd called for help. This isn't over, Marcus snarled at Emily. Then he turned to the others. Move! Now! The three men ran to another car parked nearby and sped off into the night. Emily dropped the rebar and fell to her knees by the hole, digging frantically again. The police are coming! Hold on! Emily? Sophie's voice was weaker now. I'm scared. I know. I'm scared too. But we're going to be okay. Both of us. Emily's fingers were raw and bleeding worse now, but she kept digging. She found the lid of the box again and started pulling at the boards. One came loose, then another. She could see Sophie's face now, pale and covered in dirt, but alive. Give me your hands, Emily said. And Emily pulled with all her 12-year-old strength. It wasn't enough. Sophie was bigger and heavier than her. But Emily didn't give up. She wrapped her arms around Sophie's shoulders and pulled harder, using every bit of energy she had left. Finally, Sophie came free from the box, and both girls collapsed on the ground, gasping and crying. You saved me, Sophie sobbed, hugging Emily tight. You saved my life. You don't even know me. And you saved me. Be saved, Emily said quietly, thinking of her own parents, and how no one had been there to save them from the drunk driver who hit their car. The police cars screeched into the construction site, their lights painting everything red and blue. Officers ran toward them, and suddenly Emily felt very scared. She was a runaway. They'd put her back in foster care. They'd lock her up in some group home. She tried to pull away from Sophie, but the older girl held on tight. Sophie asked. I have to go, Emily said. The police will help you now. You're safe. No, Sophie grabbed Emily's hand. You're staying with me. I don't understand why you were here or why you helped me, but you're not going anywhere. The police surrounded them, and EMTs ran over with medical equipment. One officer, a kind-looking woman with gray hair, knelt beside them. We got a call about someone being buried alive? Yes, Sophie said, her voice stronger now. 3 men kidnapped me and tried to kill me. This girl, Emily, saved me. She risked her life to save me. The officer looked at Emily, taking in her appearance. Emily could see the recognition in her eyes. This was a homeless child. Is that true, sweetheart? The officer asked gently. What's your full name? Emily Johnson, Emily whispered, looking at the ground. The men, they mentioned Mrs. Blackwood, Sophie's stepmother. She's planning to kill Sophie's dad, too. Sophie gasped. Victoria? My stepmother is behind this? Before anyone could answer, a helicopter appeared overhead, and 3 black SUVs roared into the construction site. The doors opened, and a man in an expensive suit jumped out before the car even fully stopped. Sophie! Richard Blackwood ran toward them, his face white with fear. He fell to his knees and pulled his daughter into his arms, both of them crying. Emily started to back away, but Sophie grabbed her hand again. Dad, this is Emily. She saved me. If it wasn't for her, I'd be dead right now. Richard Blackwood looked at Emily, and she saw his eyes widen as he took in her condition. This powerful billionaire was looking at a 12-year-old homeless girl who had just saved his daughter's life. Emily, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Thank you for saving my little girl. Emily didn't know what to say. She just nodded, suddenly very aware of how dirty and small she was. Sir, one of the police officers interrupted. We need to take the girls to the hospital to get checked out, and we need their statements about what happened. Of course, Richard said, standing up. Emily, you're coming with us. I want my personal doctors to look at your hands. They're badly injured. Emily looked down at her hands. Thought, covered in deep cuts and dirt. Now that the adrenaline was wearing off, they hurt terribly. I can't pay for doctors, she said quietly. Richard's face changed. Something in his eyes that Emily couldn't quite understand. You saved my daughter's life, he said firmly. You never have to pay for anything again. The hospital room smelled like disinfectant and clean sheets. Emily had never been in such a clean place. Bed, watching a nurse carefully bandage her hands. The cuts were deep, but the doctor said they would heal without permanent damage. You're very brave, the nurse said softly. Not many kids would do what you did. Emily didn't feel brave. She felt scared and out of place. Through the window in her door, she could see police officers and people in suits walking back and forth. Everyone seemed to be in a hurry, talking on phones and looking worried. And Detective James Carter walked in. He was a tall black man with kind eyes and a gentle way of speaking that made Emily feel a little less afraid. "Hello, Emily," he said, pulling up a chair. "How are your hands feeling?" "They're okay," Emily said quietly. "Is Sophie all right?" "She's doing well, thanks to you. She's in the room next door with her father." Detective Carter smiled. "Emily, I need to ask you some questions about what happened tonight." Emily nodded. She told him everything. How she'd been looking for a place to sleep in the abandoned building nearby when she heard the screams. How she'd seen the three men burying Sophie. How she'd heard them mention Victoria Blackwood and their plans to kill Richard too. "Can you describe the men?" Detective Carter asked, taking notes. The leader was named Marcus. He had a scar on his left cheek. He was tall, maybe 6 feet, with dark hair, jacket and jeans. Emily closed her eyes, remembering. The second man was shorter and nervous. He didn't want to hurt Sophie. The third one didn't talk much, but he had a tattoo on his neck. It looked like a snake. Detective Carter looked impressed. "You have an excellent memory. That's very helpful." "I learned to pay attention on the streets," Emily said simply. "You have to know who's dangerous and who's not." The detective's face softened. "I need to ask you about your situation. Our records show you were reported missing from a foster home 6 months ago. Your foster parents said you ran away." Emily's whole body tensed. "I'm not going back there. They made me sleep in the basement and clean all day. They only wanted the money the state gave them for keeping me." "I understand," Detective Carter said. "We're not sending you back there. But Emily, you can't keep living on the streets. You're only 12 years old." Respond, the door burst open. Richard Blackwood strode in, followed by a woman in an expensive suit who looked like a lawyer. "Detective Carter," Richard said firmly. "I'd like to speak with Emily, if that's all right." "Of course, Mr. Blackwood. I was just finishing up." The detective stood up. "Emily, we'll talk more later. You did an amazing thing tonight." After the detective left, Richard sat down in the same chair. Emily could see he looked tired and worried, but his eyes were kind. "Emily," he said, "Sophie told me something that I need to ask you about. She said when you were saving her, you mentioned that everyone deserves to be saved. She said you sounded sad when you said it. Can you tell me why?" Emily looked down at her bandaged hands. "My parents died 6 months ago. A drunk driver hit their car. Nobody could save them. Street while people just watched and waited for the ambulance." Richard was quiet for a moment. "I'm so sorry, Emily. That's a terrible thing to happen. Is that why you're living on the streets?" Emily nodded. "Foster care was worse than being homeless. At least on the streets, nobody pretends to care about you when they don't." "Where do you usually sleep?" Richard asked. "Different places. Sometimes in the subway stations when it's cold. And in buildings. There's a library on 5th Avenue that lets me stay until closing time. The librarian, Mrs. Chen, sometimes gives me sandwiches." Richard's jaw tightened. "You've been living like this for 6 months? A 12-year-old child?" "I'm good at taking care of myself," Emily said defensively. "I don't steal. I don't do drugs. I just try to survive." "What about school?" Emily shrugged. "I can't go to school without an address. But all the books I want. I've read hundreds of books in the last 6 months. I like learning." The door opened again, and Sophie came in, using a wheelchair even though she could walk. She was wearing a hospital gown and had an IV in her arm. But she looked much better than before. Her blonde hair was clean now, and her blue eyes were bright. "Dad, did you ask her yet?" Sophie said eagerly. "Ask me what?" Emily looked between them, confused. Richard and Sophie exchanged a look. To Emily. "Emily, what you did tonight was extraordinary. You saved my daughter's life at great risk to your own. You're clearly an exceptional young woman." He paused. "I'd like to help you. I want to become your legal guardian." Emily's eyes widened. "What? But you don't even know me." "I know you're brave," Sophie said, wheeling closer. "I know you're good. I know you saved me when you could have just walked away." "That tells me everything I need to know," Emily started. "Victoria is being arrested as we speak," Richard said grimly. "The police found evidence at our house. She'd been planning this for months. She married me 2 years ago pretending to love Sophie and me, but it was all about money. With Sophie gone and me dead, she would inherit billions." "How could she do that to you?" Emily asked Sophie. "You're just a kid." Sophie's eyes filled with tears. "I thought she loved me. Died when I was 8. I was so happy when Dad found someone new. Victoria seemed so nice at first. She took me shopping, helped with homework, came to my school plays. It was all fake." Richard put his arm around his daughter. "We both fell for her act. But that's over now. She's going to prison for a very long time." "The men she hired are being hunted by the police," Sophie added. Detective Carter said they'll catch them soon thanks to your descriptions. All this information. Then she looked at Richard. You really want to be my guardian? But I'm nobody. I'm just a homeless kid. You're the girl who saved my daughter, Richard said firmly. You're brave, intelligent, and good-hearted. You deserve a chance at a real life. Let me give you that chance. Dad's right, Sophie said, reaching out to take Emily's bandaged hand gently. And besides, I've always wanted a sister. And me, you're way braver than I am. Emily felt tears running down her face. She hadn't cried since her parents' funeral. But what if I mess up? What if I'm not good at being in a family again? Then we'll figure it out together, Richard said. Family isn't about being perfect. It's about being there for each other. You were there for Sophie when she needed someone most. Let us be there for you now. A knock on the door interrupted them. Back in, his face serious. Mr. Blackwood, we've arrested your wife. She confessed everything when we told her Marcus had been caught and was talking. He paused. She also revealed something else. She's been slowly poisoning you, sir. Small doses of arsenic in your coffee every morning. Not enough to kill you quickly, but enough to make you sick over time. Richard's face went white. That explains the headaches and stomach problems I've been having. Immediately, Detective Carter said. The good news is that we caught it in time. The doctors can treat it. Sophie started crying harder. She was killing you too, Dad? It's okay, sweetheart. We're both safe now, thanks to Emily. Richard looked at Emily. If you hadn't saved Sophie and told the police about Victoria's plans, I might have died without anyone knowing it was murder. Emily felt overwhelmed. She'd gone from being a homeless kid looking for a place to sleep to saving 2 lives and being offered a family. There's more, Detective Carter said. We found documents in Victoria's room. She had been in contact with Marcus for years. Apparently, they've done this before. 3 other wealthy men lost their children in accidents and then died shortly after, leaving everything to their new wives. Victoria and Marcus would split the inheritance. Killers? Sophie gasped. In a way, yes. They killed for money, using marriage as their weapon. Detective Carter looked at Emily. Your bravery tonight didn't just save the Blackwoods, it stopped 2 dangerous criminals who would have kept killing. The hospital room was quiet for a moment. Then Richard stood up. Emily, I'm going to call my lawyers right now to start the guardianship process. But first, I want to ask you something. Emily's stomach growled loudly in response, and everyone laughed. She couldn't remember the last time she'd had a real meal. I'll take that as a yes, Richard said, smiling. Sophie, what do you think? Should we order pizza? Burgers? Chinese food? Everything? Everything, Sophie said excitedly. Emily, what's your favorite food? Emily thought about it. I used to love my mom's spaghetti. She made it with homemade sauce and lots of cheese. And we'll order the best Italian food in New York, Richard declared. This is a celebration. We're all alive, we're all safe, and we're going to be a family. As Richard made phone calls and Sophie chatted excitedly about showing Emily her room and her school and all her favorite places in the city, Emily sat quietly, trying to process everything. This morning, she'd woken up in a cardboard box under a bridge. Tonight, she was being offered a home with billionaires. Sophie's genuine smile and Richard's kind eyes, she realized something. They weren't offering her a home because they were rich. They were offering her a home because they were grateful and because they were good people who wanted to help her. Emily? Sophie said. You okay? You look like you're thinking hard about something. I'm just thinking about my parents, Emily said honestly. I think they would be happy that I saved you. Others, even when it's scary or hard. They sound like they were wonderful people, Richard said, putting his phone down. And they raised an amazing daughter. I promise you, Emily, we'll make sure you can honor their memory. We'll visit their graves, we'll talk about them whenever you want, and we'll make sure you grow up to be someone they'd be proud of. Emily nodded, unable to speak through her tears. 6 months, she felt something she'd thought was gone forever. Hope. 3 days had passed since the rescue. Emily stood in front of the massive Blackwood mansion on the Upper East Side, holding a small plastic bag with her only possessions. A photo of her parents, a worn book Mrs. Chen had given her, and the hospital bracelet from the night she saved Sophie. It's really big, she whispered to Richard, who stood beside her. It's your home now, Richard said gently. But you'll get used to it. Sophie came running out the front door, her face bright with excitement. She'd fully recovered from her ordeal and was back to being a typical energetic 15-year-old. Emily, come on! I want to show you your room! Dad and I spent all yesterday getting it ready for you. Emily followed them inside, her eyes wide. The entrance hall had marble floors and a ceiling that went up 3 stories. Paintings and gold frames lined the walls. A museum. Don't worry, Sophie whispered, noticing Emily's expression. I know it looks super fancy, but it's actually pretty cozy once you get used to it. And the kitchen always has snacks. They went up a grand staircase to the 2nd floor. Sophie led Emily down a hallway and stopped at a door painted soft blue. "This is it," Sophie said. "Your room." Emily opened the door and gasped. The room was beautiful but not overwhelming. A warm cream color. There was a bed with a purple comforter, a desk by the window, and empty bookshelves waiting to be filled. But what made Emily's eyes fill with tears was the framed photo on the nightstand. It was the picture of her parents that Richard had somehow restored and enlarged. "How did you?" Emily started. "I had my assistant go to the hospital and make a copy," Richard explained. "Then our photo expert cleaned it up and framed it. Watching over you." Emily walked slowly into the room, touching things gently like they might disappear. The closet had new clothes in her size. The desk had school supplies. Everything was perfect but simple, not overwhelming with luxury. "The bathroom is through there," Sophie pointed to another door. "And my room is right next door, so if you have nightmares or anything, just knock." "Why would I have nightmares?" Emily asked. Sophie and Richard exchanged a look. "Right," Sophie explained. "Both of us might, actually. Trauma doesn't just go away. Dad found us a really nice therapist named Dr. Martinez. She specializes in helping kids who've been through hard stuff." "I don't need a therapist," Emily said quickly. "I'm fine." "That's what I said too," Sophie admitted. "But Dad made me go yesterday and it actually helped. She's not like what you see in movies. She just talks to you like a normal person." On the bed and patted the spot next to him. Emily sat down cautiously. "Emily, you've been through more than any 12-year-old should have to endure," he said. "Losing your parents, living on the streets, and then saving Sophie from something horrible. It's okay to need help processing all of that. It doesn't make you weak." "On the streets, being weak gets you hurt," Emily said quietly. "You're not on the streets anymore," Richard said firmly. "You're home. Family is letting people help you when you need it." There was a knock on the door, and an older woman with gray hair and a kind smile came in carrying a tray. "This must be Emily," she said warmly. "I'm Mrs. Patterson, the housekeeper. I've been with the Blackwood family for 20 years, since before Sophie was born." "Hi," Emily said shyly. "I brought you some hot chocolate and cookies," Mrs. Patterson said, setting the tray on the desk. "Mister, I like to read. I've asked my grandson to bring over some of his books from when he was your age. He had quite a collection." "Thank you," Emily said, surprised by the kindness. After Mrs. Patterson left, Sophie grabbed Emily's hand. "Come on, let me show you the rest of the house. There's a library that you're going to love." They spent the next hour exploring. Bedrooms, a huge kitchen, a dining room that could seat 20 people, and a library with thousands of books. There was also a game room, a home theater, and a swimming pool in the basement. "This is too much," Emily said, feeling overwhelmed. "I don't belong here." "Yes, you do," Sophie said firmly. "You saved my life. But even if you hadn't, you'd still belong here. Dad and I already love you." "You can't love me. You barely know me," and turned to face Emily. "Do you know what I was thinking when I was in that box, running out of air?" Emily shook her head. "I was thinking that I was going to die alone, and no one would ever know how scared I was. I was thinking about all the things I'd never get to do. Then I heard your voice, and suddenly, I wasn't alone anymore. You didn't know me either, but you risked everything to save me. If that's not love, I don't know what is." They had dinner together in the small dining room. Richard called it small, but it was bigger than Emily's entire old apartment. They were eating pasta, which Richard had ordered specially because Emily mentioned her mother's spaghetti. "So, Emily," Richard said, "I've enrolled you in Sophie's school. It's called Branson Academy. You'll start next week, which gives us time to get you ready." Emily's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. "But that's a private school. It must cost—" "The cost doesn't matter," Richard interrupted gently. "What matters is that you get the best education possible. You're clearly very intelligent. Mrs. Chen from the library called me yesterday. She said you read at a high school level and have an extraordinary memory." "Mrs. Chen called you?" Emily was surprised. "I reached out to her first," Richard admitted. "I wanted to talk to someone who knew you. She cares about you very much. I heard you were safe and off the streets. She said you're one of the brightest children she's ever met." "The kids at Branson are going to be mean to her," Sophie said suddenly. "We should prepare her for that, Dad." "Mean? Why?" Emily asked. Sophie sighed. "Because they're rich kids who think they're better than everyone else. When they find out you were homeless, some of them will be cruel. But don't worry, I'll be there. So if I say you're cool, most people will accept you." "I don't need you to protect me," Emily said, her pride stinging a little. "I know you don't need it," Sophie said. "But that's what sisters do. They look out for each other." Sisters. The word made Emily's heart warm. "There's something else we need to discuss," Richard said, his tone becoming serious. "The media has gotten word of what happened. They know a homeless girl saved my daughter from Victoria's murder plot. You, Emily. Take pictures, write stories. Emily felt panic rising in her chest. I don't want to be famous. You don't have to be, Richard assured her. I have a PR team that will handle everything. We'll release one statement and one photo, and then we'll ask for privacy. Most media outlets will respect that, especially when it involves a minor. What will the statement say? Emily asked. The truth, but simply told. Girl who saved Sophie, that you've joined our family, and that we ask for privacy as we all heal and move forward. After dinner, Sophie insisted on watching a movie together. They sat in the home theater, which had seats more comfortable than any Emily had ever experienced. Sophie picked a comedy, saying they all needed to laugh after the heavy week they'd had. Halfway through the movie, Emily started crying, not because she was sad, but because she was overwhelmed, and counting the coins she'd collected from fountains, hoping to have enough for a slice of pizza. Now she was sitting in a mansion, wearing new pajamas, with a full stomach and people who cared about her. Sophie paused the movie immediately. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong, Emily said through her tears. Everything's right. That's why I'm crying. I keep thinking I'm going to wake up and be back under the bridge. On Emily's other side, so she was between him and Sophie. This is real, Emily. You're not going back to the streets. Ever. But what if you change your mind? What if I do something wrong? Then we'll work through it, Richard said. Families don't give up on each other. Sophie has done plenty of things wrong. Remember when you tried to keep a secret pet snake in your closet? Dad, Sophie protested, but she was smiling. My point is, Richard continued, families forgive each other and help each other grow. You're not a guest here, Emily. You're family. They finished the movie, and then it was time for bed. Emily went to her new room. Her room, she had to keep reminding herself. She put on the new pajamas, brushed her teeth with her new toothbrush, and climbed into the softest bed she'd ever felt. But she couldn't sleep. Sleeping with one eye open on the streets, the safety felt strange. The room was too quiet. On the streets, there were always sounds, cars, people, sirens. Here, it was peaceful, and that peace felt wrong somehow. There was a soft knock on her door. Emily? Sophie's voice called. Can I come in? Yeah, Emily said. Sophie came in carrying a pillow and a blanket. I can't sleep either. I keep having nightmares about the box. Night? Emily scooted over, making room. Sophie climbed into the bed beside her. Is this okay? Sophie asked. I know you're used to being alone. It's nice, Emily admitted. On the streets, I always wished I had someone to watch my back while I slept. Someone I could trust. Well, now you do, Sophie said. We watch each other's backs now. They lay in the dark for a while, and then Sophie spoke again. Emily, can I tell you something? Sure. Came into our lives, I was so happy. I thought I was getting a mom again. I tried so hard to make her love me. I did everything she asked, tried to be perfect, but it was never enough because she never really cared about me at all. That's not your fault, Emily said. She was using you. I know that now. But it still hurts. How could someone pretend to love a kid just for money? Emily thought about it. I don't know. But I know what real love looks like. And your dad has it for you. The way he ran to you at the construction site, the way he looks at you. That's real love. He looks at you that way too now, Sophie said. He told me yesterday that finding you was like finding another daughter. He said the universe took my mom away, but sent us you. Emily felt tears on her cheeks again. She was doing a lot of crying lately, making up for all the months she hadn't allowed herself to feel anything. Yeah? Thank you for not letting me run away at the hospital. Thank you for not letting me die in that box. They fell asleep like that. Two girls who had faced death and found family in the aftermath. 1 week later, Emily stood in front of Branson Academy wearing her new school uniform. The navy blue blazer felt strange on her shoulders, and the plaid skirt was shorter than she liked. Sophie stood beside her, looking confident and relaxed. Sophie said, "Keep your head up. Don't let anyone see they're getting to you. I'll introduce you to my friends first. They're actually nice." Emily nodded, her stomach churning. She'd faced dangerous people on the streets, but somehow, facing a school full of rich kids felt scarier. They walked through the grand entrance together. The school looked more like a museum than any school Emily had seen before. Marble floors, tall windows, and artwork on every wall. Sophie! A group of girls came running over. They all looked perfect. Shiny hair, expensive jewelry, and confident smiles. Hey guys, Sophie said. This is Emily, my sister I told you about. The girls looked at Emily with curious eyes. One of them, a tall girl with red hair, stepped forward. You're the one who saved Sophie? She asked. That's incredible. I'm Madison. Hi, Emily said quietly. We heard about what happened. Another girl, Asian with long black hair, added. Everything. You're really brave. I'm Jessica. Before Emily could respond, a boy's voice cut through the conversation. So this is the famous homeless girl? Everyone turned. A tall boy with perfectly styled blonde hair stood there with two other boys, all of them smirking. Shut up, Trevor, Sophie said sharply. What? I'm just curious, Trevor said, his eyes scanning Emily up and down. How does someone go from eating garbage to eating caviar? Must be quite the adjustment. Face burn, but she remembered what Sophie had said. Keep your head up. It is an adjustment, Emily said, meeting his eyes. Just like it must have been an adjustment for you when your dad got arrested for tax fraud last year. Oh wait, you probably didn't have to adjust much. Rich people don't usually go to real jail, right? The hallway went silent. Trevor's face turned red. Madison let out a surprised laugh. How did you? Trevor started. Psst, Emily said simply. Libraries have them for free. You should try reading sometime. Sophie grabbed Emily's arm, grinning. Come on, let's get to class. As they walked away, Emily could hear Madison telling Trevor, She got you good. That was amazing, Sophie whispered. How did you know about his dad? I recognized his last name from the news. Walsh. His dad's company was all over the papers 6 months ago. I have a good memory. English, and Emily felt more comfortable there. The teacher, Ms. Rodriguez, was warm and welcoming. When she asked Emily to introduce herself, Emily kept it simple. I'm Emily Johnson. I like to read, and I'm happy to be here. The class was reading To Kill a Mockingbird, which Emily had already read 3 times at the library. When Ms. Rodriguez asked questions about the symbolism in the book, Emily found herself raising her hand. The mockingbird represents innocence, Emily said. Tom Robinson and Boo Radley are both mockingbirds. They're innocent people who are hurt by the cruelty of others. The title is telling us it's a sin to destroy innocence. Ms. Rodriguez smiled brightly. Excellent analysis, Emily. Have you read this before? Yes, ma'am. Several times. After class, a quiet boy with dark skin and glasses approached her. That was a good answer. I'm David. I love that book too, Emily said, feeling a little less alone. The morning went better than expected. Emily excelled in all her classes, especially math and science. Years of calculating how to survive on limited resources had made her quick with numbers, and her extensive reading had given her knowledge beyond her grade level. At lunch, Sophie led Emily to a table with her friends. The cafeteria was nothing like the public school Emily had attended before. Not just pizza and nuggets, but salads, pasta, grilled chicken, and fresh fruit. So, Emily, Jessica asked, what was it really like, living on the streets? Sophie shot her a warning look, but Emily decided to answer. It was hard, she said honestly. You're always hungry, always cold or hot, always scared. You learn which restaurants throw out good food and when. You learn which subway grates have warm air in winter. Police officers will move you along gently, and which ones will be mean about it. The table was quiet. These kids had never imagined such a life. But you know what the hardest part was? Emily continued. Being invisible. People walk right past you like you don't exist. They step over you if you're sleeping on the sidewalk. They look through you like you're not even human. Madison's eyes were filling with tears. That's horrible. It is, Emily. Important. Every person you see matters. The janitor cleaning the halls, the lunch lady serving food, the security guard at the door. They're all people with stories and feelings. They all matter. I never thought about it that way, David said quietly. Just then, Trevor appeared at their table with his friends. Touching story. Really pulls at the heartstrings. Would to adopt you? Sob story? Sophie started to stand up, but Emily put her hand on her arm. No, Emily said calmly. I got adopted because I saved Sophie's life while you were probably at home playing video games in your mansion. What have you ever done that mattered, Trevor, besides spending Daddy's money? At least my daddy's money is honestly earned, Trevor sneered. Not like I'm some charity case. Trevor, stop, Madison said. You're being disgusting. I'm saying what everyone's thinking? She doesn't belong here. She's trash from the streets. Emily stood up slowly. The whole cafeteria was watching now. You're right, she said clearly. I am from the streets. I've eaten from garbage cans. I've slept in cardboard boxes. I've been beaten up for a half-eaten sandwich. And you know what? I'm not ashamed of it. It made me strong. It made me brave. Person who saves lives instead of the kind who tries to make others feel small because they're insecure about their criminal father. Trevor's face was purple with rage. You little... Mr. Walsh! The principal's voice boomed across the cafeteria. Dr. Washington, a tall black woman with an authoritative presence, walked over. My office, now. But she... I heard everything, Mr. Walsh. My office. The rest of you, finish your lunch. The cafeteria burst into whispers. Several students Emily didn't know gave her small smiles or nods of approval. After school, Richard picked them up himself instead of sending the driver. How was the first day? He asked. Sophie immediately launched into the story of Emily standing up to Trevor. Richard listened quietly, his face growing concerned. Are you okay, Emily? He asked. That must have been difficult. I'm fine, Emily said. Trevor Walsh. You shouldn't have to deal with bullies at all, Richard said firmly. I'll speak to the principal. No, please don't, Emily said quickly. That'll make it worse. I can handle Trevor. Besides, I think I might have made some friends today. That evening, as they were doing homework, Richard's phone rang. His face went serious as he listened. What is it, Dad? Sophie asked when he hung up. That was Detective Carter and the other two men. They were hiding in New Jersey. They're all in custody now. Emily felt a weight lift from her shoulders that she hadn't realized she'd been carrying. So it's really over? The criminal part, yes. The trial will take months, but Victoria and her accomplices will definitely go to prison. Detective Carter said Victoria broke down and confessed everything when she realized Marcus had been caught. She admitted to 3 previous murders with him. Died? Emily asked, horrified. 3 other families destroyed for money, Richard said grimly. But thanks to you, Emily, they'll never hurt anyone again. That night, Emily couldn't sleep again, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was from thinking about everything that had happened. In just over a week, her entire life had changed. She had a home, a family, friends, and a future. She got up and walked to her window, looking out at the city lights. Other kids were sleeping on the streets like she used to. The thought made her heart ache. Can't sleep? Richard's voice came from her doorway. Just thinking, Emily said. Richard came in and stood beside her at the window. What about? All the other kids still out there. Cold, hungry, scared. I got lucky, but they're still suffering. Richard was quiet for a moment. You know, Emily, I've been thinking about that too. I want to do something to help. Helping me start a foundation. For homeless youth? Emily looked up at him, surprised. Really? Really? We could provide shelters, food, education programs. You could help us understand what these kids really need because you've lived it. We could call it the Emily Johnson Foundation. No, Emily said quickly. Not my name. Why not? Emily thought about it. Because it's not about me. It's about them, the invisible kids. Maybe. To remind people that these kids exist and matter? Richard smiled. The Visible Foundation. I love it. We'll start working on it tomorrow. Sophie burst into the room. I heard talking and... Oh, are we having another family meeting without me? We were discussing starting a foundation for homeless youth, Richard explained. Sophie's eyes lit up. Can I help too? I could organize fundraisers at school. Even Trevor would have to donate or look bad. Really laughed, for the first time in months. This was her family now. Not perfect, but real. Not without problems, but facing them together. You know what? Emily said. I think we're going to do something amazing. We already did, Sophie said, hugging her. We found each other. Richard put his arms around both girls. The Blackwood family, now with 300% more courage and compassion. Dad, that's such a bad joke, Sophie groaned. Emily said, and they all laughed. As they stood there together, looking out at the city, Emily realized something. She'd spent months feeling like she'd lost everything when her parents died. But maybe, just maybe, she'd found something too. Not a replacement for what she'd lost, but something new and precious in its own right. A second chance, a new family, a purpose, and most importantly, hope. 6 months had passed since that terrible night in Brooklyn. Of 100 people at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel, her hands steady as she held the microphone. She was wearing a simple blue dress that Sophie had helped her pick out. The audience was full of wealthy New Yorkers, all gathered for the launch of the Visible Foundation. 6 months ago, I was invisible, Emily began, her voice clear and strong. I slept in abandoned buildings and ate from trash cans, and I believed I would die on the streets before I turned 13. The room was completely silent. Richard and Sophie sat in the front row, their eyes shining with pride. But then something happened that changed everything, Emily continued. I heard someone crying for help. A girl was being buried alive, and I had a choice. I could walk away and stay safe, or I could risk everything to save her. I chose to help, and that choice led me to my new family. Looking at the faces in the crowd, she saw Mrs. Chen from the library, tears streaming down her face. She saw Detective Carter, nodding encouragingly. She even saw Trevor Walsh, who had been forced by his parents to attend and donate as community service for his bullying. But here's what I need you to understand, Emily said, her voice growing stronger. There are thousands of kids like me in New York City right now. They're not invisible because they want to be. We choose not to see them. We step over them, around them, past them. We treat them like they're part of the city landscape instead of human beings. A woman in the third row was crying now. A man in an expensive suit looked uncomfortable. The Visible Foundation isn't just about providing food and shelter, Emily explained. It's about seeing these kids as people with dreams, talents, and potential. A child is one opportunity away from changing their life. I'm living proof of that. She clicked a button, and a photo appeared on the screen behind her. It was a picture from a security camera showing her in her dirty clothes, digging desperately to save Sophie. This was me 6 months ago, she said. Then she clicked again, and a photo of her at school appeared, smiling with Sophie and her new friends. This is me now. Between these two pictures is that someone saw me. Someone valued me. Someone gave me a chance. Richard stood up and joined her on stage. The Visible Foundation will provide emergency shelters, but more than that, it will provide education, counseling, and pathways to permanent homes. We're not just feeding bodies, we're nourishing souls and building futures. Sophie came up too, taking Emily's hand. My sister saved my life when she had nothing. Could do if they had something. Imagine the lives they could save, the problems they could solve, the beauty they could create. The audience erupted in applause. Within an hour, they had raised $2 million in donations. After the gala, Emily was exhausted but happy. As they rode home in the car, Sophie was buzzing with excitement. Did you see the mayor's wife? She was crying. And that tech billionaire, Mr. He pledged to donate computers to all our shelters. You did amazing, Emily, Richard said. Your speech was perfect. I was so nervous, Emily admitted. But then I thought about all the kids who needed someone to speak for them, and the nervousness went away. When they got home, there was a surprise waiting. Mrs. Patterson had decorated the living room with balloons and a banner that read, "Happy 13th birthday, Emily." Emily gasped. Until tomorrow. We know, Sophie grinned. But we wanted to celebrate at midnight, right when it officially becomes your birthday. Your first birthday with us. They stayed up until midnight, eating cake and laughing. When the clock struck 12, Richard and Sophie sang happy birthday, and Emily blew out 13 candles. Make a wish, Sophie said. Emily closed her eyes. She wished that every homeless kid could feel what she felt right now, loved, safe, and hopeful. Emily woke up to find her room full of books, hundreds of them, stacked everywhere. What is this? She asked, amazed. Richard and Sophie stood in her doorway, smiling. Mrs. Chen helped us, Richard explained. We asked her what you loved most at the library, and she gave us a list. These are all first editions or special copies of your favorite books. Emily picked up a leather-bound copy of To Kill a Mockingbird and opened it carefully. Someone had written, "To Emily, who understands what it means to protect innocence. Harper Lee's estate." How did you... I may have made some calls, Richard said with a wink. When I explained who you were and what you'd done, many authors or their estates wanted to send signed copies. Emily spent the morning going through each book, crying happy tears. There were notes from authors telling her she was brave, that she mattered, that her story inspired them. They visited Emily's parents' graves. It was the first time she'd been back since the funeral. Richard and Sophie stood back, letting her have a private moment. Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. Emily whispered, kneeling by their headstones. I'm okay now. I found a new family. Not to replace you, but to add to the love you gave me. I'm trying to make you proud. I'm helping other kids like me. I'm using everything you taught me about kindness and bravery. On their graves, sunflowers, her mother's favorite. Richard and Sophie, they're good people, she continued. Richard reminds me a little of Dad. He's patient and kind and always knows what to say. And Sophie is the sister you always said you wished you could give me. We take care of each other. When she stood up, Richard and Sophie each took one of her hands, and they walked back to the car together. That evening, there was another surprise. Revealed Detective Carter with a young girl about Emily's age. The girl was thin, dirty, and scared, exactly how Emily had looked 6 months ago. Emily, Detective Carter said, this is Luna. We found her living in the same area where you used to stay. She remembered you. She said you once gave her half your sandwich when she was hungry. Emily remembered. It had been one of her hungrier days, but Luna had looked worse. Happened to you in the foundation, Detective Carter continued. She asked if she could meet you. Emily immediately walked over to Luna and hugged her. The girl started crying. It's okay, Emily said softly. You're safe now. We're going to help you. Richard stepped forward. Luna, we have a place for you at our emergency shelter. It just opened yesterday. You'll have a bed, food, and people to help you figure out what comes next. Sophie added, you'll have friends. Emily and I will visit you. We'll make sure you're okay. Luna looked at Emily with wonder. You really made it out? It's really possible? It's possible, Emily said firmly. I promise you it's possible. As Detective Carter took Luna to the shelter, Emily realized something. Her rescue of Sophie had created a ripple effect. Richard was healthy and not poisoned. Victoria and her accomplices were in prison, unable to hurt others. And now the foundation would help hundreds of kids like Luna. One act of bravery on a cold Brooklyn night had changed countless lives. "Emily," Richard said that night at dinner, "I have something to tell you. The adoption papers were finalized today. You're officially, legally, Emily Johnson Blackwood now." Emily dropped her fork. "But I thought it would take years." "Sometimes the system works faster when everyone agrees it's the right thing," Richard said, pulling out the official documents. "You're our daughter now, officially and forever." Sophie jumped up and hugged Emily. "You're really my sister now, like legally and everything." Emily looked at the papers through tears. There it was in black and white. She had a family again. She belonged somewhere. "Can we visit Luna tomorrow?" Emily asked. "Of course," Richard said. "In fact, I was thinking Luna reminds me of someone else I know. Someone brave and smart who just needs a chance." "Dad, are you thinking what I think you're thinking?" Sophie asked excitedly. "Every kid deserves a family," Richard said simply. "We have room in our hearts and our home." Emily's eyes widened. "You want to help Luna the way you helped me?" "Only if you're comfortable with it," Richard said quickly. "And you get a say in who joins our family." Emily thought about Luna, alone and scared at the shelter. She thought about how Sophie had welcomed her without hesitation. She thought about how family wasn't just about blood, but about choice and love. "Every kid deserves to be visible," Emily said. "Every kid deserves a chance. If Luna wants a family, then she should have one." Sophie squealed and hugged Emily again. Big sisters ever. That night, as Emily lay in her bed, her own bed, in her own room, in her own home, she thought about the journey that had brought her here. 6 months ago, she had nothing but the clothes on her back and the memory of her parents. Now she had a family, a purpose, friends, and hope. But most importantly, she had learned something vital. Sometimes the worst moments in our lives lead to the best ones. Her parents' death had led her to the streets. Sophie had led her to Richard. And now, together, they were creating something beautiful from something tragic. Her phone buzzed with a text. It was from David, her friend from school. "Saw the news about the foundation launch. You're amazing, Emily. Proud to know you." Then another from Madison. "You're going to change the world." Even Trevor had sent a message. "Respect." Emily smiled and put the phone down. Tomorrow, she would visit Luna Foundation. She would go to school and learn and grow. She would make her parents proud and her new family proud. But tonight, she was just a 13-year-old girl who had been given a second chance at life. A girl who had learned that heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear torn clothes and have dirty faces and empty stomachs. Sometimes heroes are just people who choose to help when it would be easier to walk away. Sleep. Emily heard footsteps in the hallway. Sophie peeked in. "Emily, you awake?" "Yeah. I just wanted to say thank you again, for saving me, for being my sister, for everything." "Thank you for saving me too," Emily replied, just in a different way. Sophie climbed into bed beside her, just like she had that first night. "We saved each other," Sophie said. "That's what family does." Of her room, surrounded by books and love and possibility, Emily knew she was finally home.